Lesson 4.3 is trig graph discovery again, this time level 4 and 5. I'm going to throw at you a little bit more of a complicated parent function, just using sine, but it's the same for cosine. So we've always had this a value, this number in front that goes with the amplitude. That's like your vertical stretch, how high the waves are. If it's a negative, that means it's been reflected. You won't have any reflections in this lesson, so you won't have to worry about that. And then sine of b, which b is found by taking 2 pi divided by the period that we see on the graph, because we talked about how sine and cosine, their period is always 2 pi, but sometimes it changes, so we have to change our b value to match. And then x minus h is different. So when it goes x minus something, that's your horizontal shift. If it turns positive, it actually went to the left, because you think about if I put in a negative, I'm just looking at -4 on this one, x minus a -4 actually would turn into x plus 4. So having this minus here actually changed to the opposite of what you would think it would go, and then the plus k on the end is still the vertical shift. So we're just changing that one thing, is this horizontal shift. So we have a sine graph. Let's first find the midline. So we see that it goes, the lowest is -3, the highest it is 5. So 5 plus -3 is 2 divided by 2 is 1. Should be your midline. So there's been a vertical shift up 1. The height from 1 to 5 would be a 4. Again, we're not going to make it negative. But here's the problem. Looking here at the y-intercept, it starts in the center and then goes down first. Normally it should go middle to high. That looks like it should be negative. If you try to do that on this lesson on Delta Math, it'll say don't use negative. Keep it positive, because they're wanting you to focus on a horizontal shift, so moving it left or right. So if I go back, I see a middle here, and then a high point, and then a middle, a low, back to middle. That actually is one cycle right here. So what did this point do? It went left, if you can see it, -8. It went left 8. So if I put in x minus 8, like that, really it's going to make that turn into x plus 8. Okay, then the hardest thing is to figure out the period of it. So think about this. If this was -8, that's the distance of 8, plus another distance of 8. So really this is a total of 16. So to find b, take your 2 pi divided by 16 and simplify. That would become a 1/8. So you could put 1/8 pi, or just put pi over 8. They're wanting, and then it should match. All right, let's try another one. Now we're going to cosine graph, but again, let's find midline. So we go from -4 to 4. So the middle is just going to stay the same at 0. So you can put 0 or leave it blank. Then that means the amplitude, it went up 4. Again, we're not going to make it negative. Now let's try to find that pattern that cosine does, which is starts at high, middle, low, middle, back to high. Start with high, which I don't even see it here. High, middle, low, middle, high. So this is the cycle I'm looking at. So it looks like it went right 3 pi over 2. So I'm going to just plug in 3 pi over 2, but see how it looks like x minus. That's what I'm talking about, is you're going to see a negative in the formula, but actually it went right instead of left, like you would think. Okay, a cycle, we're going to do some math here. It goes from 15 pi over 2, well, I should start from the left, 3 pi over 2 to 15 pi over 2. If you subtract those, you'll figure out how long that is. You can kind of do it in your head. So thinking 15 pi over 2 minus 3 pi over 2, I can subtract since I have a common denominator. 15 minus 3 is 12 pi over 2, which divides to make 6 pi. That's not our b, that's the period. So now remember, to get our b value, we take 2 pi divided by our period. Pi's cancel, 2 6 is a third. So I put in a third there, and it should match. It's very much so just paying attention to detail. Okay, and our last one goes back to having a sine graph. So we want to find midline, which would be here at -2. So we want to go down 2. We want our amplitude to be 2, and we want to find that pattern starting middle, high, middle, low, middle. No negatives in this lesson. So I don't have a middle here, I have a middle here, but then I go middle, low. I don't want that. I'm going to go middle, high, middle, low, back to middle. So I'm looking right here at this cycle. Okay, to find our shift, we went right of 5 pi over 8, so I'll plug that in, and it'll look like x minus that number. And then to find the difference from here to here, I'm going to go 25 pi over 8 minus 5 pi over 8. 25 minus 5 would be 20 pi over 8, which I can divide out of 4, so that would become 5 halves pi, or 5 pi over 2. Again, that's just the period. So to find b, I take 2 pi divided by 5 pi over 2. Again, we don't want to divide by a division. We want to actually multiply by the reciprocal of this. I'm going to flip it to be 2 over 5 pi. You might need to do it somewhere else. Okay, pi's are going to cancel, but nothing else. Multiply straight across, that gets 4/5. That's my b value. So just take your time and really try to find one of these cycles. How far left or right did it go? And then try to figure out subtracting, maybe adding, like we did on the first one. We added this distance plus this distance to get the total. You're just trying to think this total length of the cycle, and then to get your b value, taking 2 pi divided by that b, or by that period.